Hey guys, this is the Elder Freak, Hobbit Freak, Spider Freak, and what we're looking at today is my build that I did for 322, which is the occultist Arakaali's Fang guy. And for some context, I've played PoE for a little over 1,000 hours now. I would say I'm about a mid-level player with a fair amount of knowledge. But with PoE, there's only so much you can know, so I'm sure there's a lot of stuff with this build that I'm missing or, could be swapped out. So this video is for people who are about at a mid-level and understand the concept of league starting, understand that whole flow, but are looking for a build that they can move into with investment once they reach a point in the league. And from my experience, I've played, I think, 5 leagues now. And for the majority of them, I'd done what a lot of new people do, which is you pick a league starter, and that's what you play until the end of the league. League starters are league starters for a reason. They're incredibly strong. At the start of the league, they get a lot of their power from the passive tree or from cheap uniques, or, they scale with things that aren't hard to get, like Righteous Fire, you just need some life and some regen, so on. So this build is not that. Arakaali's Fang, regardless of if you're an occultist or whatever, is not a league starter build. We'll talk more about why that is, but anything that this build could do at, let's say you have 10 divines and it's, the 3rd day of the league and you really want to swap over to this, you've got 10 divines, you had a good start, it would genuinely be a waste of time. You would be better off running your existing league starter, farming up a little bit more money for the big swap. So because I'm not like actually a build maker, I don't understand PoE to an extent that I could explain why, the 4th vow is better than the brass dome or so on and so on. I understand that it works and I understand how to get it to work, but I as far as the things under the hood, I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing. So we're taking more of I guess, like a holistic approach to the build, in the sense that when I was learning this build, I saw that it worked with investment, and I saw that I had some spiders and they were supposed to run around and kill people. But the process of actually learning this build, how it scales and how it functions, there was not really a resource for this. When I first started, I used Casual Dan's guide. And so just looking at Casual Dan's guide, there's a couple of things that I think, and this isn't to say he's wrong, I think the reason this guide exists is because people who are looking up guides and going on the PoE vault, they need, I guess, an easier, less modular build. Arakaali's Fang is already expensive, and so I think what he was trying to do with this build was make it much more approachable. But there's a couple things I have a problem with. And this is what I mean when I say I'm just talking about the build in general. I'm not necessarily showing you, I'll show you my POB, but we're not going to go into this like it's a guide. We're mainly just talking about Arakaali's Fang, why it works, and maybe some things I noticed this league that could help you, because I did not see this info out there. So the first thing that I really don't like with this guide and with a lot of the PoE Ninja Fang users is you'll notice 54% are using gravebind, and I'm sure a big reason for that is gravebind is listed here. Gravebind is bait. Gravebind, how it works, and the main reason we're using it is nearby enemies killed by anyone count as being killed by you instead. So the spiders do dot damage primarily. That's really where your damage is coming from, is that damage over time, that poison. That's what you're scaling. That's why we have Amanammu, so on and so on. That poison is damage from you. It is not damage from your minions. And so, yes, there are situations where the spider could kill something and you don't get the kill. You don't get to resummon your spiders. For context, Arakaali's Fang, you summon a spider on kill. There's like a 2-second internal cooldown. It will summon as many spiders as there are corpses nearby. We'll go into the setup in a second, but Gravebind is bait. You will get the kill credit with or without it. The reason that Casual Dan runs Gravebind is because he uses a setup with skittering bots and with skitter bots and Infernal Legion. So essentially what this does is he has little robots that constantly have an aura. And skitter bots have some benefit. I do not believe they have 25% of mana reservation of benefit. Let me see. They don't have 35% benefit. I don't believe they do. And so this is purely convenience. But there's a better way to set this up, actually. So to illustrate what's going on here, let's say we're in the middle of a fight and our spiders just despawned because they last for about, 30 seconds or so, right? Our spiders despawned and we have some corpses around us, right? So the reason that he runs those bots is because when he presses his writhing jar to summon these guys, the bots will automatically kill them, right? One moment here. So the reason he runs the skitter bots is the Infernal Legion support will automatically kill the bugs generated by the writhing jar, thereby summoning your spiders without you, the player, having to actually kill them yourselves. So this is why he runs Gravebind, is to give those skitter bots that credit. But there's a better way to do this. So rather than summoning the bugs and waiting for the skitter, or having the skitter do it, we run Divine Ire. This requires one skill gem. We'll talk about how modular this build is and how realistic it is to fit this in. It's extremely easy to fit in. You just hold it down. We have that big AoE. Now when we summon our bugs, we immediately get the kill credit, and we have our spiders there. So that is to illustrate this is a wasted slot. The only benefit, I will give it this, it gives you chaos resistance early, which on the glove slot is hard to get. And, it might not be realistic for you in the early game to have an unset ring with chaos res and then, another ring with stats and stuff like that. The early game build, it's not unrealistic, but you know what I mean. I could see Gravebind being a cheap pickup, just something to throw on, get back to maps. It is not an item you should run with. I find that to be a mistake. The rest of it is really, really good. I think this should be followed if you are swapping with a low budget. You could follow this to a T with low budget and you'll be online pretty quickly. You'll be doing, 10 million plus. You'll have maybe like 50, 60K EHP, and that's great. But that's not min-maxed, and I find this setup to get a little bit harder to min-max. So we're going to talk about what my build does differently, and our Arakaali's in general. The best way to think of this skill is that it's incredibly modular. Arakaali's Fang, because it's generated from your weapon, automatically gives you a 4 link in this slot. With the addition of the Squire, that essentially makes it a 7 link. You could call it a 6 link, I guess, because level 1 summon spider, but I consider it a 7 link. This is where your DPS skyrockets. If this were to be an Aegis Aurora, the build would have about 11 million DPS. With the Squire, it has about 33 million, and that is with melee splash. With Withering Touch, it's significantly higher. This is just my AoE setup right now. So, and moving into the Squire is recommended by Casual Dan as well. It's covered as well. One of the key differences, though, is we're going to be running the Stampede, and we run it with chance to block attack damage. We're going to start the discussion now about how modular Arakaali's Fang is. And the perfect example of this, a good way to exemplify that, is in the gloves in the boot slot. There's a couple of different things you could go here, and that's reflected on PoE Ninja. If we look at Occultist with Arakaali's Fang, let's take a look at the boots here. We've got Stampede. Where is we've got Windscream, and then there is how many are running Corpse Walkers? We've got some Corpse Walkers too. So there's a couple setups that you can run. The reason that I like these is because it gives you increased recovery rate of travel skills, and you can run Phase Run with increased duration. I'm pretty sure it's Phase Run. Yeah, Phase Run. You can run this with increased duration. If you look, it's considered a travel skill. This makes you harder to detect, gives you phasing, and it's really nice to fill that out in your build with that. So the Stampede allows you to do that. We could use Phase Run here instead of Rolling Blades. The trade-off is that you wouldn't be able to run Molten Shell on your auto cast instead. And for my setup, which is bossing, I prefer the Molten Shell. But that's just something to consider with the Stampede, is that aside from being able to get the Anointment and the mana regen while moving to keep your Cyclone and your Flush Offering going, it lets you phase run a lot. So that's sort of my endorsement for this boot. The main thing is the Anointment. Your mid-game goal, your mid-game setup is very likely going to be an Aegis Aurora with Glancing Blows, because it's cheap and it really, really makes you hard to kill while you're mapping. But Aegis Aurora Glancing Blows, if you want to do bossing or like really, really heavy-hitting mapping like High Delirium, you can still die in those scenarios because it's Glancing Blows. It ends up hurting you at past a certain point. And so one of your first endgame goals is to get that block cap. I use a Roomies to fill it out. I could get tattoos to not need the Roomies and maybe open up a movement speed flask. But like I said, I'm bossing, so I'm not really going to sweat it too much. Getting that block cap is significant because then you could run Divine Shield, and that's really, really good. But the reason we like block cap, aside from it being really, really good EHP, and this is going to be kind of hard to explain, but we want to get rid of the casual Dan. Let's find his skill links. Let's go to his 14 mil. Okay. So we really, really want to get rid of this. We want to get rid of our Blasphemy and Triple Curse. This lets us not need Windscream. I don't think you need Windscream. We want to get rid of this Triple Curse because that's taking up a lot of mana. And so how we can get rid of that Triple Curse, how we can get rid of all those setups in general, really, really get going, is Asenaths and a Despair on Hit Ring, or Corrupted Gloves with, you know, Temporal Chains, and then Despair on Hit. Getting these two items frees up 4 links for you. And so this is to say, the reason you want block cap is because the retaliations from a Tempest Shield are considered a hit. And so this ring and this glove will proc the curse enemies with blank on hit. And oddly enough, this gives you more of like a reach than the Blasphemy support, which isn't even your whole screen. And so I think of it like this. Blasphemy support is bigger than a Cyclone duration. I mean, a Cyclone range, right? It's, let's say it's like yay big or something, right? It's pretty big. Let's say it's like yay big, maybe. Okay. But enemies, especially ranged ones that you would want to explode from a curse, those could be all the way out here. And so when you're blocking that stuff on block cap and they're getting zapped, they're getting cursed, and your roaming crazy spiders will get them. How your spiders function, this isn't really shown to you or like properly visualized if you've never played the build, but I guess this is what you can expect. Once you get this Ancient Skull, and like I said, you need like 25, 35 div to get into this build, but you know, that's what this type of build is. This is for somebody who wants to try out a modular, scalable build and are tired of a league starting build that's harder to scale and has a large pool of people fighting for, you know, a skin of the lords for fucking 3 weeks. So you need some money to get in, but you know, once you get your Ancient Skull, these guys, whenever they get a crit, they will just go off wherever. They will go even off screen. The spiders will fight. This makes it oddly good for Simulacrum, really good for AFK farming Elder. It makes like any boss fight easy because like your minions will just be off screen and going nuts, wailing on them, and you can just focus on moving around and dodging. So that's how the spider behavior works. This is I would say a fairly expensive build. This version, and we'll have a POB in the description. What makes this build so expensive is that we have Malevolence has no reservation on a Auls, and there's a cheaper version of this, which is the Impresence, and this makes Despair have no reservation if cast as an aura. But remember, we want to get those curses automated on hit, and so when you reach that point, you know, you don't, that's when your Auls comes on. It's a very modular build, you know, you can swap and move things around to fit these different stages of investment. It's just the floor for investment is high. But once you can get rid of this, and have despair, have no reservation, then you have your 2 auto curse here. You've now freed up the reservation from despair, temporal chains, punishment, and this can now be spent on vitality, purity of elements, defiance banner. Because here's the dark truth, the dark secret, that nobody wants you to know. You, like, all of the damage is in your jewels, and even then, you don't need that many jewels. You just need an Amanamus to scale like fucking crazy. The only sources of damage in this build, and this is an exaggeration, but like realistically, as somebody approaching this build, the majority of your damage is going to come from having a squire, about 30 plus million with it, maybe 10 to 20 million without it, depending on how you're optimizing your current setup. Having a squire, and then having awakened gems in those slots, and then having ghastly eye jewels that are good. And these are annoying to buy. I encourage live searching these, because if you want to get them, like, this is good, but it doesn't have life. And if you want to get this with life on it, that's going to be a pretty penny. But that's really where your build comes together, is through those purchases, right? So, how my build functions, it's a little bit different than other ones I'm seeing on PoE Ninja. For context, we'll look for 4th vow fang users. So of 4th vow fang users, 85% are champ, 5% are occultist. And this is me here. And so even amongst this bracket, I don't think anybody is running this setup. I got this from a POB that was shared to me, this right here. But it doesn't seem like people are running it this league. So what it does is it replaces your Mind Over Matter with Divine Flesh, and this combos with your 4th vow. Divine Flesh gives you maximum chaos res and converts elemental damage you take to chaos. And then 4th vow allows you to mitigate that chaos damage with armor. So this is something that you get more returns from the more that you're able to scale your build. And so, yeah, I mean, the more armor you have, the better. That's why it's important on these clusters. You'll get 35% increased effect, and you'll get some some flat armor. This is a great jewel to have. If this had life, it'd be like a mirror, or 100 div or some shit. I've yet to find one that has armor and life, but, well, can it? Well, I guess it can't. Right? Because it can only have 4 affixes. Yeah, I'm stupid, of course. Okay, whatever. So yeah, getting armor, getting all that stuff is super valuable, because this chest will allow you to mitigate that. And another thing I run to reach block cap is I run a Red Nightmare to get more block. There's a lot of ways that you can build an Arakaali's Fang Occultist, and the reason for that is because all of your damage is going to come from your jewels and your weapon, and then eventually buying a squire. That's all your damage. Like, this is good, but it's quality of life. This isn't going to be, these are auto curse setups. It's all about just getting these strong jewels, tossing them in your belt with the flat, with the minions deal. And that's where your damage comes from. And so what this allows you to do is have a very modular setup with your tree and with your auras. You don't even really need to 6-link until you have like an Enlighten 4, or you're in an auls setup, which if you're moving into an auls setup, you have 6-link money. So a lot of just when you swap over, a lot of your gameplay can be on a brass dome that has like a 3-link setup, and then a 2-link setup, and then a single gem for like your Convocate or something. You can really make it work, because I can't stress enough, all your damage comes from your gems, your squire, and your ghastly jewels clusters, with 35 increased effect, attack speed, stuff like that. And what that affords you is a lot of options in the tree. You could drop this cluster, you could drop this. There's just a lot you can do. The Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame setup I'm running myself is for Unnatural Strength. This gives me about 7 million more DPS. So yeah, let's look at the POB. I've kind of explained it. This is the POB. This is my AoE DPS. Oh. I'm actually missing... Wait. No, yeah, this is Withering Touch, Multi-Strike. Melee. Oh, okay. No, this is my accurate damage. So we are facing Guardian Pinnacle. If we were to not be Guardian Pinnacle, we would be dot cap. If we were to go to a standard boss, we're not dot cap, about 35 million. And then, yeah. So for Guardian Pinnacle, and just really quick reference, Uber's 10 million DPS, 173,000 EHP. Guardian Pinnacle, 200,000 EHP, 33 mil. So a big component of this is getting our maximum block chance. And then this... oh, no, this is an old jewel. Let me get my latest. This is old. There we go. Okay. We'll just get this set up real quick. Sorry. And then we're going to make this melee splash. Withering touch. Beautiful. And we're at 20 qual on that. Cool. So our Guardian Pinnacle stats, 206,000 effective hit pool with 36 million DPS. We lost some hit pool after that last switch because I recently dropped these two nodes here. If we were to get these, we'd be back up to 221,000. So you could definitely do that, lose some damage out and some health out from this tree here. Maybe take the accuracy off of your minions here. It all depends on the content that you're running. But yeah. The build uses a little bit of mana res on the tree. 12% mana res efficiency of skills. The rest of it just comes from our auls and our charisma, so there's not a lot of trickery there. Really, the build isn't that hard to set up. I find a lot of builds that I play, I can struggle figuring out where that last bit of mana reservation comes from. It's all very straightforward with this, and all your power comes from the clusters. Like I said, I'm running some tattoos with the Red Nightmare. I'm also running some tattoos for all attributes. This is just to round out how much dex strength and int I need. I'm sure this could be min-maxed a touch, but I had some in there to get my dex up because I needed to drop some of these larger nodes. But yeah, we'll do a quick breach stone so you can see my damage mobbing, and then you can see my damage bossing. Gotta get my withering touch here. So we'll summon our spiders with divine ire. We only got 18, so we'll summon some more. Beautiful. So when we block, we curse whoever hit us, and when we hit something, we curse whatever we hit. This also presents kind of an interesting tech that you can do inside of really large fights like an expedition or a simulacrum. If your flesh offering is up, you're able to quickly divine ire to apply that curse in a big AoE like that. It's very niche though. It's only something I use rarely because it's not that much bigger than Cyclone and you stop moving. But if the situation that you're in necessitates standing still, it can be appropriate. Had to resummon spiders there. You'll notice we're not really taking any damage. It's hard to tell you how tanky 200,000 EHP versus Pinnacle bosses is. I'm able to tank Shaper Slams, Uber Shaper Slams, I mean. I'm able to tank Empowered Die Beams. I'm not sure if I can tank the second phase Cyrus Die Beam Uber. That might be something I should test. But I know I can tank every aspect of it. Unless it's bleed, I have to potion through bleed. But if you were to find a way to solve bleed on the build, then you would probably be completely fine against Cyrus. When we get to the end of the Breach Stone, I'll show you a tech. There's something you can do where if you weapon swap, you can desummon your spiders. The reason that's valuable is that spiders don't replace themselves. And so, because spiders don't replace themselves, if I were to try to summon some more, because I don't want them to run out during the boss fight, they'll die. And so I'll kill them myself, and then summon some more like that. And then let me put Withering Touch in here. He's not cursed. Now he's cursed and withered. There we go. He goes down. Cool. So, yeah, about 30 million DPS pinnacle dot cap on normal mobs. And 200,000 EHP pinnacle. So the build is very strong. I would say total investment on this, if you were to include the clusters and all that stuff, I'd say it's probably about 100, maybe 100 to 150 div. I'm not sure. Auls, let's say 18 with the charisma anoint. It's rounded up to 19. Fuck it. I know it's not, but 19, 30, that's 49 div. All the awakened gems totaled together, some of them are like 6, 7 div, so maybe we were talking like 40, 55 div there. Chest plate was 6, I believe. 71 div. I mean 61 div. Perfectly rolled ancient skull, which it's not completely perfect. The one I'm actually using that's perfect is getting enchanted right now, but I think it's like 2 div, so it's nothing. These are dirt cheap. Gloves are going to be what you make of it. Just get an Asenaths until you're super endgame. Enemies with temporal chains on hit with a T1 life roll and res. You know, you're probably going to be spending 3 to 5 div, but still. All the bulk of the money is going to be jewels. I would say each of these eyes. Let's just take a gander. We have... The wither doesn't exist on any of these. About 1 div for that one. This one is going to be real pricey. 40 life. Flat fizz. And then attack speed. Yeah, that's an 8, 12 div jewel there. So, like I said, maybe about 100 div for this setup. Probably a little bit more, though, if I'm being honest. But it's able to tank fucking anything. It's got so much EHP. And it deals about 30, 40 million DPS. So I think for that budget, for somebody who wants to swap into something at around 25 to 35 div and then, you know, invest into it, tweak it in different ways, it's a great build because there's really not a lot of required links. So like I said, if you actually want to look at it, take a look at the POBs. That'll be in the description. It's not really worth going over everything because the build is so modular and you can make it kind of work anywhere you are with whatever links you have, so long as you have, you know, an Aegis and a Fang or a Squire and a Fang. You'll be cruising no matter what. So, yeah, that's the Spider Freak video. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.